In 1997, Apple was weeks away from collapse. Not metaphorically, not dramatically, financially. The company that had once introduced the Macintosh to the world, the company that ran the 1984 Super Bowl commercial, the company that helped define personal computing, was losing hundreds of millions of dollars per year. Analysts questioned its survival. Some journalists openly speculated about bankruptcy or acquisition. Today, that sounds impossible, but it happened. And what saved Apple was not the iPod, not the iPhone, not a breakthrough invention. It was focus. To understand how serious the situation was, we need to go back to the early 1990s. Apple Incorporated had built its reputation on innovation and design. The original Macintosh, introduced in 1984, had changed the way people interacted with computers. But after co-founder Steve Jobs left the company in 1985, following internal power struggles, Apple entered a very different phase. Throughout the 1990s, Apple expanded its product lines aggressively. There were multiple versions of the Macintosh sold under names like Performa, Quadra, Centris, and Power Macintosh. Many of these machines were technically similar, with minor variations that confused customers and even employees. Walter Isaacson, in his 2011 biography Steve Jobs, describes how product differentiation inside Apple became so unclear that even internal teams struggled to explain the lineup. At the same time, the broader industry was shifting. Microsoft was licensing Windows to a wide range of hardware manufacturers. This created a massive ecosystem of relatively affordable personal computers. As Windows improved throughout the 1990s, its market share grew significantly. Apple's closed hardware-software model left it isolated in comparison. By fiscal year 1996, Apple reported a net loss of approximately $816 million, according to its SEC filings. Revenue was declining. Inventory levels were high. Product development was fragmented. Confidence inside and outside the company was eroding. Apple did not lack engineers. It did not lack ideas. It lacked clarity. In December 1996, Apple acquired a software company called Next for roughly $400 million. Next had been founded by the very person who had left Apple a decade earlier, Steve Jobs. The acquisition was officially about technology. Next's operating system would later become the foundation for Mac OS, but strategically, it brought Jobs back into the organization. In July 1997, after internal restructuring, Steve Jobs became interim CEO, a title he famously shortened to ICEO. He did not return with a revolutionary device ready for launch. He returned to a company overwhelmed by its own complexity. One of the first things Jobs reportedly did was demand a complete overview of all ongoing projects. Engineers and managers presented dozens of active initiatives. Many overlapped. Some lacked clear commercial direction. According to Isaacson and interviews with former Apple executives, Jobs drew a simple 2x2 matrix on a whiteboard. On one axis, consumer and professional. On the other, desktop and portable. 4 quadrants. He decided Apple would build exactly one core product for each quadrant. Not 10 variations, not endless configurations, 4 primary products. Within months, Apple eliminated approximately 70% of its product line. The Newton Message Pad, Apple's early personal digital assistant, was discontinued. Numerous Macintosh variants were canceled. Internal projects were shut down. These decisions were controversial and painful. Jobs later acknowledged in interviews that focus requires saying no to good ideas. But simplification reduced internal conflict. It aligned engineering, marketing, and operations around fewer priorities. Then came a move that shocked the industry. In August 1997, at Macworld Boston, Steve Jobs announced a partnership with Microsoft. During the keynote, Bill Gates appeared via satellite on a large screen behind him. For years, the companies had been portrayed as rivals in a technological battle. Yet Microsoft agreed to invest $150 million in non-voting Apple shares. More importantly, Microsoft committed to continuing development of Microsoft Office for the Mac for at least 5 years. The agreement also settled ongoing patent disputes between the companies. These facts were documented in Apple's official press release on August 6, 1997, and reported by major outlets including the New York Times. The reaction from parts of the audience was hostile. Some attendees booed. But strategically, the move was essential. Without Microsoft Office, Apple risked losing credibility in business and education markets. The partnership bought time and stability. It was not about pride, it was about survival. In 1998, Apple introduced the iMac. The iMac was not just hardware. It symbolized coherence. It was clearly targeted at consumers. It simplified setup. It reduced configuration complexity. According to Apple's 1998 annual report, the company returned to profitability that year. The iMac sold nearly 800,000 units in its first 5 months, becoming one of the fastest-selling computers in Apple's history at the time. But the iMac was a result of earlier decisions, not the starting point. Behind the scenes, operational discipline improved dramatically. In 1998, Apple hired Tim Cook as Senior Vice President for Worldwide Operations. In later interviews with Fortune and other publications, Cook described how he reduced inventory levels and streamlined supply chain processes. Apple moved from holding months of inventory to significantly leaner cycles. That shift reduced costs and increased responsiveness. Again, not glamorous, but fundamental. The narrative that Apple was saved by a single brilliant product oversimplifies reality. The turnaround was multi-layered and incremental. Product reduction, cost control, supply chain restructuring, strategic partnerships, clear brand positioning. In a 1997 interview with BusinessWeek, Steve Jobs stated, "Deciding what not to do is as important as deciding what to do." That sentence captures the essence of the turnaround. Before the iPod in 2001, before the iTunes Store in 2003, before the iPhone in 2007, Apple survived because it narrowed its focus. Complexity had nearly destroyed it. Simplification rebuilt it. There was no miracle moment, no secret invention hidden in a lab. There was a decision to subtract. By 1999, Apple's financial condition had stabilized. By the early 2000s, the company was positioned to expand again, this time from a disciplined foundation. It is easy, in hindsight, to assume Apple's success was inevitable. It was not. Public filings, press coverage, and first-hand accounts show a company under extreme pressure in 1996 and 1997. Analysts at the time genuinely questioned its long-term viability. The difference between collapse and recovery was not more ideas. It was fewer. The lesson is uncomfortable because it challenges a popular belief that innovation is primarily about addition, more features, more products, more expansion. In Apple's case, survival required elimination. Not everything deserved to continue. Not every good idea deserved resources. Not every internal project aligned with the core mission. Focus created space for excellence. And only after that space existed could future breakthroughs emerge. Apple did not become the world's most valuable technology company overnight. It rebuilt credibility step by step, beginning with structural discipline in 1997. When people tell the story of Apple's revival, they often start with the iPod. But the real turning point came earlier, in boardrooms and whiteboard sessions, in canceled projects and uncomfortable partnerships. The company almost died, and it survived because it chose clarity over complexity. The central lesson is simple and historically grounded. Growth without focus can destroy even the most innovative organizations. Sometimes the most strategic move is subtraction. Apple's near collapse in the 1990s is not just a corporate anecdote. It is a case study in disciplined leadership. The company did not save itself by doing more.